Hello.
How are you?
um, welcome to season two,
Season 3,
season three,
episode 2.
episode two. Thank
Yes,
you for the correction.
it's all right.
Um, so as you can see, the setting is quite different today. That's
Yes.
because Richard is working from home.
Um,
So I'm in the office. Richard is working from home, so the setting is quite different today. Um, but yeah, so today we'll be speaking about the risks of trust, of using a trust.
yes.
There's a lot of people that hear the pros and cons of a trust, and we're here to be fully transparent with you and honest with you in regards to the pros and the cons of using trust. And some things that may be perceived as a con may actually be a pro. It just depends on the way that you see it. But we're here to just clarify any misconceptions of using a trust. Would you like to add anything? Is that before I get started, Richard?
No, I think, yes. I can't think of anything. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, as they say. I mean, okay, well, all I would say is that a lot of people perceive trust to be very risky, which is true with the wrong information, as in anything in life. So that's why we're talking about this today, is just to really set the record straight for anyone who's thinking about trust, anyone's heard anything that might be contrary or negative. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say for now.
Yeah. And just before we get aside, I would actually like to stress, just touching on what you've said, it's really important to go to someone who's qualified to give you that type of advice, because it is an unregulated industry, and if you go to the wrong person or wrong solicitor, someone who's not qualified to handle something like a trust, they can end up drafting the wrong type of trust for you. So sometimes it depends on the type of people you go to. So that's why it's really important to do your research and see who you're going with, read the reviews, see what qualifications they have. Those type of things would ensure that, things are done properly and done properly the first time, not the second or third time. Just to touch on that. So
Very important.
to get started, so some people perceive trusts as irrevocable, and they think that's a negative thing. It's a bad thing. What would you say in regards to that, Richard?
Well, in this country, a trust isn't really a trust if it's not revocable. I guess we should define what revocability means. So revocable means that the one who creates the trust has the ability to change their mind and remove it or shut it down. So when you think about it in principle, if I give you something, if I, got my pen here and I say, right, I'm giving you this pen and I have the right to change, no, I want the pen back. But was it really a gift?
No.
Once it's yours, exactly. So, so I'm not going to give you the gift of this pen with some limitations of, I've got the right to change my mind, because then it's not technically a gift. And equity, equity doesn't aid a volunteer. You must give the gift, number one, and the person receiving it must receive it and must acknowledge that they've received it. So that's where irrevocability just confirms that it's given absolutely. There's no, you can't change it back to default to how it was back in the beginning before the transaction started. It's given and it's done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also, people can also see it as a loss of control, not being able to kind of have that freedom to control those assets that they put inside the trust.
Yeah. And I just actually, before I go on to that point, I just realized, just to finish off on the irrevocability aspect, there's 3 types of trust mainly in the UK. So we've got a nominee set up, a bare trust, absolute trust, which I guess is the only can I call it irrevocable scenario, because the trustees are not really trustees. The beneficiaries have the right to just recall it back as and when they wish, once they're over the certain age of 18. But the 2 types of trusts, which is a discretionary trust or interest in possession trust, they will be drafted as if they were absolutely irrevocable. Sorry. So, and it's there for the protection of those who set the trust up. You don't want a situation where the settlor can change their minds. It'd be a sham. Okay, so we don't want that, because it will lead to fraud and confusion, which is not a good situation to be. So irrevocability is actually a very powerful thing.
It gives that protection.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And to your second question, sorry, I've rambled so much.
The loss of control.
That's a very important point, because and it's a blessing, and I don't like using the term curse, but it swings both ways. So the blessing of loss of control is that it's not yours; it belongs to the trust, which is the protection. That's what you want. So there is control, because you normally give a letter of wishes, but you lose ownership. Now, if you're looking at it properly, you lose ownership. Control, if it's done correctly, should always be there. Your trustee should try to honor the wishes of the one who set up the trust in the first place. So
yes.
Heard in England and Wales, it's 125 years that a trust will last. So your voice is heard for years to come, for generations to come. So you want that loss of control, because that's where the protection is. If you get it wrong, and you got the wrong trustees, family members, people with very poor emotional intelligence. What I mean by that, so you got your best mate on there, and then you have a falling out, and then they're going to be deliberately belligerent and divisive, so that things can't proceed in the trust because you had a falling out the other day. Like, that's irresponsible. So you need someone who can be balanced to make decisions in context, without this emotional sway and what I call foolishness.
Because that's where the fear of manipulation and betrayal comes in. People are thinking, what if my trustee does this or does that they're not in line with? What could they potentially do to manage that?
Exactly. No, absolutely on point. So yeah.
Okay. And also, this is a very popular one, is the cost. Now, we all know that trusts aren't cheap. They're just not cheap. And as you say, I'm just trying to remember the saying now, you should be willing to invest 1% to protect the other 99% of your estate. And if that's 1% of your estate going towards a trust to protect the 99%, then that is a great investment. People say expensive or cost is quite relative to different people. So how would you expand on that?
I think I don't like using the term costs, cheap, expensive, because we're talking to the wrong crowd, if I'll be honest. It's not a commodity. We're creating value. So investment, absolutely. That's what it's doing. It's doing a job. When you go to buy a car, it serves a job, right? It serves a need. And you get to the point that, well, not all cars are the same, even though they serve the same need in terms of getting you from A to B. So if I want to buy I'm showing my age here, Ford Fiesta or Cortina versus a Lexus or a nice premium car, whatever your flavor is, Rolls Royce, Phantom, Ghost, whatever it might be, they both do the same thing. But I'm getting to my destination in style, in comfort, in absolute peace, with peace of mind, because I made the investment to do that, versus a Cortina where I may not be. That's a commodity, right? I use Cortina. Let's say Fiesta, so everyone understands.
Because I wasn't too familiar with what that car was, to be honest.
That's a commodity, right? You can haggle the price of Fiestas. You can't haggle the price of a Rolls Royce Ghost, okay? Because there's very few of them around. And it's the same as trust. You're making an investment to protect your family for 125 years. It's not something where it's disposable. It's protecting. And guaranteed you'd spend $3 or $4 grand versus $100 grand on a litigation for divorce. Yeah, so at the end of the day, when we people say, oh, it's a bit pricey and haggling the price, like, no disrespect, but you're not ready. You're just not ready for trust. And that's the bottom line. So it's really about understanding the concept of what a trust is doing. And so for the advice, for the setup of that, that's, and the fact that it's saving you thousands, possibly millions more in the future, it's value that you're receiving.
Yeah.
Cost is irrelevant.
Definitely.
That's the perception that you must understand. And if people are going to start haggling the price, I'm like, well, look, you're not ready for this. This is not for you. Just stick to something that it's good for you for this time being, until the time is right for you to talk about an investment as opposed to pricing.
Yeah, and plus it's to create generational wealth for generations to come. So at the end of the day, it is worth it. It's a great investment. You're not only continuing your legacy, sorry, you're also providing for your family if you're not going to be there. And I feel like people are not really not people, but some don't really understand the significance of being able to do that. And comparing the price to it.
We're trying to change that narrative. That's our mission.
Yes.
So, it takes time, but we know we'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. And also another one is having to keep it up to date.
It's important. I mean, reviewing trusts are important, because life changes, situations changes. Someone might die. The main beneficiary may have died, for example. That might change the whole dynamics of the trust. The property may not exist anymore. Things like that is important. So it must be updated at least every couple of years, without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Also, gift with reservation of benefit. Do you want to explain that?
Right. So some anti-avoidance rules, okay? General anti-avoidance rules by the HMRC. So one of them is where you make a gift. I kind of mentioned it earlier with the pen, but you're still keeping the asset. And the challenge that I have when we're speaking to people, clients who maybe especially for inheritance tax planning, is, and the biggest asset they have is their main home. And they're thinking, well, I'm trying to reduce my inheritance tax. But unfortunately, if you put it in trust for your main home, you can't, it's not going to do anything for you. If you gift it to your children and you still, even if you don't even use a trust, the fact you just gift it to someone and you're still living in there, you still reserve the benefit. You still enjoy it. So how can you say you gifted it if you're still enjoying it for yourself? If you're not living, then that's a different story. But the fact that you are still enjoying that asset, the land, or the beneficial use of that property, you are reserving benefit. So therefore, revenue are saying, well, how can you have the benefit and the privilege of enjoying your inheritance tax allowances when you haven't actually given anything? You're still reserving that benefit. Now, before, but once upon a time, that you could do that, and then they switched on to that loophole, shall we call it?
Yes.
They put a block in it. So that's anti-avoidance rules for gift with reservation of benefit.
So they cooked on and put a block in it.
Pretty much. That's basically the long and short of it. So to make sure people understand, you cannot, if you're going to do asset protection, that's asset protection. You cannot mix the two when it comes to your own home where you live in, or an asset that you are enjoying. To say you're giving it away and you still reserve the benefit, you still enjoy it, then that's a problem. And then I'm going to get corrections. So the last time we did this, everyone wants to correct you. Oh, but say if you pay rent, then it doesn't. I'm not trying to teach people in this in terms of how to get out of the anti-avoidance rules. I'm just saying what will cause an anti-avoidance scenario.
So basically, just to make it simple, you can't put a trust on your main home.
You can, but
you can
for inheritance tax purposes.
For inheritance tax purposes. Okay.
Yeah, asset protection purposes, no problem.
But not for inheritance tax.
Then, if you feel you want to do inheritance, just for those who want to correct me, then yes, paying market rent will get rid of the anti-avoidance scenario. But my question always is, why would you want to pay, if you live in a house and you're paying no mortgage, and in the rent in your area is £5,000 a month, unless you can justify that. Most people don't want to be forking out that kind of money because of their pension and everything else. So anti-avoidance rules with paying market rent doesn't always work, only for very few. But technically, yes, paying market rent is one way.
Okay, thank you. And also the 10-year anniversary charges. Would you want to explain a bit about what that is?
One other thing I forgot to mention. Forgive me.
Sorry.
Because I'm talking about trusts for your main home. We have trusts for other property, like shares, or other property like residential buy-to-lets, etc. There's another anti-avoidance rule that must be considered, and that is what we call non-settlor interested trusts. So we've got trust that the settlor, the one who creates the trust, the interest is with them. So that's mainly your main home because you're living in it. But to not violate the anti-avoidance rules, then typically the trust should be non-settlor interested. So in other words, it's not for the benefit of the settlor, or the benefit of the settlor's spouse if you're married, or for the benefit of the settlor's children if your children are under 18. So those are the criteria. So if you're very interested in inheritance tax planning and not violating anti-avoidance rules, that's really for, and the other side of it, which is very painful, which a lot of landlords, well, now our time is going, but I just wanted to throw that one in there as well.
Okay.
That goes in more detail, so I'm just want to be quiet. Yeah.
It's all right. Thank you. Yeah, I did touch on the 10-year anniversary charges as well.
So basically trusts have three areas to be very mindful of, which can cause a risk if you're not aware of it or it's not planned, which is the anniversary charge, the 10-year anniversary. So basically every 10 years a trust will be revalued for inheritance tax purposes. I'm not going to go into the technical reasons why that's done, but effectively, if you set up a trust today, let's say £100,000, it will hold the value of £100,000 for the next 10 years. And so it has to be revalued for the up-to-date value of that property to reflect in the trust. Now, because of something called the nil rate band, if the value of the trust exceeds that, then it will trigger that 10-year anniversary charge. And the excess, depending on how long the trust has been going for, very complicated calculation. There's an additional up to 6% charge in inheritance tax fees, effectively, that could be levied. So that could come to a surprise for someone. And I had a client that it would have been a massive surprise on their main home when it shouldn't have happened because of poor drafting of the trust. So it's just for people to be aware of that. Make sure they get the right advice, so those surprises don't come to sting them at the wrong time. And it could be a lot of money on a very high value asset. So unless it's for careful planning. So some people might pay 6% than 40%, but that you need to make an informed choice, i.e. get the right advice to do so.
Thank you.
The other type of charge, so before I forget, sorry to begin on you.
It's all right.
Is an entrance charge, which, so again, if the value of the trust exceeds 325,000 or the nil rate band, if that changes at any point, then that can trigger immediate 20% hit on tax on the excess. Okay, anything above 325, and also if the trust is shut down, there's an exit charge, again up to 6%, if the value of the trust exceeds the nil rate band.
So there is a value on the amount that you can put into the trust.
There's a limit.
There's a limit. Sorry, value. Yeah.
That would help people not be stung unnecessarily, which is a nil rate band. You need to be drafted correctly. So that's why you got to speak to qualified, and there's very good qualified lawyers. LinkedIn, there's loads. We do the same thing. So we're not in exclusivity, but a bit of research for you. The last time I checked, step qualified advisors in the UK only, I think there's like 22,000 globally. There's like maybe just under 1,600 in the UK. And there's 160,000 lawyers registered under SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority. That's less than 1% of qualified lawyers to give trust and tax and inheritance tax advice to a number of lawyers in the UK. But people trust lawyers implicitly just by default, not realizing they could be getting the wrong advice or no advice at all. So it's so important to speak to the right people. I can't stress it enough.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you. And lastly, the limited flexibility with the trust.
Yeah,
you did touch on it a bit earlier.
Flexibility. I think trusts are flexible. The whole point of trust is to allow trustees time to review scenarios. We can't foresee the future. There's no crystal ball scenario. So that, by that definition, I'd say trusts are very flexible. So I think it's from what viewpoint are we defining flexibility? From an individual whose mindset is very much of ownership, then yeah, it's not going to work for you. Yeah, but in this day and age and how money works, you don't want to be an owner. At least, okay, let me define that. Let me correct that. You don't want to be seen to be the owner. Okay? Because they're the ones who get taxed the most. And anyone with any modicum of wealth, you'd rarely find anything in their name. They'll have control, but they won't have ownership, not in their name. And so that's what I'm trying to say. So flexibility to me is a very, I think it's a positive thing. Depending on which lens you're looking through.
And can I mention, because it just popped in my head now, once our name stands for own nothing, control everything.
Exactly.
Just to put that out there. But yeah, completely agree, because obviously when it's in your name, you're more targeted for like tax purposes because you're the owner. But if it's in a trust, you're not actually the owner, but you still have that control. So if you put in trust, you can act as the trustee as well.
Possibly, yeah. If it all makes sense. Every situation is unique, but if it all makes sense, then absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's all that I've got for you. Do you want to add any more that you think some might see as a drawback or a con?
Well, if I start subjects, we're going to be here all day. All I say is that we've got tons and tons of resources on our website, and it's growing every week. So if this topic really interested you and you want to find out more, please go to our website, and you'll find far more information that is free or you can invest in. So if you're interested in trusts, we've got specific courses on that. If you're a landlord and you want to know more about how to protect yourself with trust, we've got courses on that. We've got ebooks, and we've got our Once Academy that we just launched with mini courses and lots of information. And that's only going to grow. We've just launched our product description videos on our main website. So just check it out. There's loads of resources for learning. But that's all I'd say for now.
Well, that's great. So thank you, Richard, so much. For your insight.
That can work from home and we can still go live.
I know, that's great. That's great. We're still keeping it up for you guys, so you guys are able to listen to our podcast every week. So this is the first time we've done it when Richard is not in the office.
No, it's not.
But yeah, so it worked out perfectly fine, which is great.
Brilliant. All right.
Yes.
See you next.
Yes, see you next week. I'm just trying to prep them for what we're going to be discussing next week, actually. I don't seem to find it at the moment. but I'll probably put it in the description, maybe, with what our topic will be next week. But thank you for watching. If you have any questions or any feedback or anything you'd like to share, please feel free to do so.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.